You're listening to the official podcast of Bloodstock Open Air Festival. Bloodstock Radio.
Hello, good evening and welcome to Bloodstock Radio podcast number 59, and it has been a busy week here at Bloodstock as we've had a band announcement with 6 bands being announced. We had Cancer Bats joining the main stage, then on the Sophie stage we're going to have the fantastic Resin, Generation Kill, Shapes, Raging Speedhorn, and your Saturday night headliners are going to be Tarka. And if you are hoping to buy your ticket through the deposit scheme, then do hurry up as that ends on February the 28th. We also had a Facebook Live session this week with Vicky, Adam and Simon Hall, and at the end of that they did announce a fans meet and greet event in Derby on Saturday, April the 6th, but there will only be around 50 fans invited, so check out the post on the official Bloodstock Festival Facebook account if you would be interested in that. Okay, so coming up on the show tonight, some of you may remember back in December 2016, Team Rock went bust. They were the ones that produced several magazines, including the likes of Metal Hammer and Classic Rock magazine, and they also had Team Rock Radio. Well, what you might not be aware of is that a brand new radio station called Primordial Radio was formed from the ashes of that, and they are trying to do things a little differently and with a very similar ethos to our beloved Bloodstock. So I thought it'd be good to have a chat with their glorious leader Hugh Evans, otherwise known as Moose, and I will take this opportunity to point out that if you are interested in what he has to say and want to check out Primordial, then please do use the links that are against this podcast, namely www.tiny.cc/Primordial Radio with a capital P and a capital R, as that means that we will get some brownie points. Okay, so we'll have our Metal to the Masses roundup, and then we will be talking all things Primordial right here on Bloodstock Radio.
And now, a Metal to the Masses update.
Good evening, Bloodstock Radio. This is your man David checking in for Metal to the Masses Hitchin with our first weekly roundup of all things Metal to the Masses Hitchin. We had a fantastic turnout for week 1 at Club 85, with all 4 bands playing absolutely amazing sets. Our congratulations go to Spectral Darkwave and Skag Bunny, who will proceed to the quarterfinals. Commiserations to Infernal Frostbite and to Death Goals, who both played absolutely blinding sets, and I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of them in the future. Our next heat this Sunday will feature our next 4 competitors, All to the Sky, Black Skull Ritual, Dialect and Jackal's Backbone. Once again, doors are at 7 p.m. and we look forward to welcoming you all here. Also, keep your eyes peeled on the Metal to the Masses Hitchin Facebook page, where you can catch our exclusive interviews with all competing bands and find out more about the bands that are gracing the stage right here in Hitchin. Thank you, Bloodstock Radio, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Hello Mr Squatteridge, Mick Wood from Monster Ents here, doing the Metal to the Masses London thing for the umpteenth year. Here in the smoke, we're at the end of our 13 heats, that's 55 bands, on Sunday the 3rd of March. We then go straight into the pit runners up rounds, and then into the quinterfinals, because there's 5 running through to April and May. Semis, no sniggering, in June, all 3 at Big Red, every Sunday. By the time we get to the grand final on the 6th of July at Nambucca with special guest Suma, we would have been on the road to Bloodstock for 7 months. My tip for the winner? Well, you just have to come along to one of our events to see some awesome new talent, make some metal mates, and maybe even join in on our theme tune, which is currently playing in the background. Keep it loud and keep it metal to the masses. Cheers.
Jake from Metal to the Masses Sheffield here. Congrats to Soul Shredder and Realms for being the Giants and Monster Men and progressing to the semi-finals. This week we get all lovey-dovey when our heat is on Valentine's Day. So as always, at the Mulberry, £5.
Hi, this is Greg from Metal in the Cabin for Bloodstock Radio with an update for Coventry Metal to the Masses. Heat 1 was an absolute stormer, where prog metalers said Fora put on a great show with a new lineup. The drummer of Necrotic Soul was unable to make the show, so they played their black metal show without a drummer. But at the end of the day, the winners were Callous Hands and Last Hounds, who blew the roof off the Arches venue with their powerful and exciting sets. Now, if that wasn't enough excitement already for Coventry, there's a huge update on the grand final on April the 27th at the Empire. UK thrash legends Zentrix will be headlining the event, along with Coventry 2018 winners Pelugian, and the 4 finalists of this year, one of whom will go on to play Bloodstock Open Air Festival. Tickets are available from C-Tickets. Just search for Metal to the Masses Grand Final. In the meantime, my friends, stay metal.
The Big Interview.
Okay, next up on Bloodstock Radio, we are having a chat with a good friend of mine. We're talking to Moose from Primordial Radio. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. I'm doing okay. Getting back into the swing of things with Bloodstock Radio as we've only just started going again for 2019. But I'm trying to sort of broaden our horizons a bit with our interviewees around the music industry. And because I know you guys at Primordial Radio, I thought I'd get you on to have a chat about all things Primordial.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Obviously, a lot of our listeners won't have heard of Primordial yet because it's quite a fairly new venture of yours. So could you just tell us a little bit about your background, first of all, and where you've come from, and then we can lead into where sort of Primordial came from?
Wow. How long is this podcast, Paul? Well, I'll give you a very brief history if we're confining this to rock and metal.
Yeah.
So in the United Kingdom in 2008, I got a job at Rock Radio in Manchester, and our ambition was to try and break the mold of what rock radio could do in the United Kingdom, because there really there wasn't rock and metal represented, very, very, very scantily. So anyway, we ended up in there for probably about 6 years, and that's basically got watered down and dismissed. And then the core team from Rock Radio Manchester then went on to be one of the founding people in Team Rock. And Team Rock had a great idea, really good idea, but it just didn't mesh together. It just didn't work. And so when Team Rock met its end, I guess that would be in 2015, if memory serves me correctly, or 2016. I can't remember. It was 2016 when it came to an end. We still had the idea we never really executed, even though we'd been at it for 3 years. We never actually executed the idea that we initially were attracted to. So once again, like a core few of us just sat around after it all finished at my house actually, and drinking gin. And we said, "Nah, man, we should do what we said we were going to do." And we didn't really have a plan aside from, it's up to us, because we'd spent so much time, so many years, looking to somebody else to do it for us, and we would be part of that. So then, when the options, oddly enough, when the options became limited, there was only one thing. There's two things to do: either quit and go, "Tell you what, screw that, we're done." Or no, we will do this. We'll do it in the way that we think it should be done. If for nothing else, if it fails, then we can just shut up, and then we'd never have to think about it again. But so far, touch wood, so good. We're still here. We're still kicking. We're still screaming. We're still making noise, and it's okay.
Yeah, well, my sort of background of getting involved in it myself was I'd sort of heard rock radio, because I think I started listening to things like TuneIn and stuff like that, and I must have got rock radio and rock radio XS, I think, via that, because I sort of had that. I knew the name Dewsbury, I knew Sweens, things like that, but they were just really names, and I just ever listened to it every now and again. And then I sort of got tied up with my own sort of thing. And then when Team Rock sort of went under, and I'd never listened to Team Rock, because I say the Team Rocks and your Planet Rocks and your sort of Kerrang radio and stuff like that, I was sort of doing lower down sort of up and coming bands type thing, so I never really listened. But when Team Rock died, and when Ben from Orange Goblin got the fundraiser going and everything, and it was just an awful situation there just before Christmas, like 70 odd people just getting told bye, then I think it sort of got a groundswelling of public support from the metal, rock and metal community sort of thing. And And I saw Primordial as sort of being a continuation of that. These guys look like they got this good idea. It sounded like a good thing. I had watched a few of the sort of podcasts and the things that you put out as to what your idea behind it was. And then when you launched it as shareholders rather than a crowdfunding sort of thing, I sort of bought shares almost as a crowdfunder. It was almost just sort of like, I'm not really looking at investing in this as a business or anything. It was just kind of, these guys seem to have a good idea. They seem to have been dumped on by a great height. So, hey, here's a few quid. Go run with it. But I've ended up being, quite a big part of it. And everyone, everyone's a big part of Primordial, aren't they?
Well, that's the whole idea behind it. And that's why we sold shares. Because ownership is vastly, it's so important. Whoever owns it controls it. And we were determined that it wasn't going to be a large media company. We worked for some pretty big companies. Guardian Media Group was the one that we were under. And then we were under the control of a massive VC, a venture capitalist company, who were all in it for different reasons. And I'm not having a go at them because they have their own business and they have their own ideas. But at the heart of it, they didn't really give a fuck about rock and metal. It was maybe we could make money from this. And don't get me wrong, we want to make money. The goal at Primordial is to have what has really not happened before in the United Kingdom. And that is to have a profitable, sustainable business that gives back to its community. Nobody's really made it work yet, really, for rock and metal. Okay, we can talk about Planet Rock and classic rock, but in terms of rock and metal, we can list the names of ones that have flied and died, so to speak, if that makes any sense. So it's utterly important that the community owns this, that we own this, so that we can determine exactly what happens to it. And like I said, a few minutes ago, if it doesn't work, then we can look ourselves in the mirror and go, okay, this thing that we've been saying for years and years and years, that there's this vibrant, deeply loyal, incredibly committed audience, this community that exists. They're worth it. They are worth it. And honestly, I spent years, I spent a decade of my life standing in front of advertising agencies and board members and company heads trying to convince them that we are worth it. And it was falling on deaf ears. And so either you keep on repeating that or you change it. So we changed it. And so I said, tell you what, we'll sell shares to you, and you own a piece of Primordial Radio. And my ambition is to make it the best rock and metal radio station in the history of mankind, but also for you to get a return. I would like to make it. I don't want it a charity. I don't want it to be, hey, for the cause, and aren't these guys plucky? No, I want to make this a viable, sustainable business that gives back to its community, and ultimately make the mainstream work for us. That's the idea.
Yeah, and it certainly seems to be going very well. I mean, I was amazed at the target that you had and the fact that you smashed it. I mean, 130,000, 153 ended up with 850 odd investors. That's a lot of people to believe in what was essentially an idea at the time. That's nothing solid. You're just getting people to believe in an idea. That's a lot of people and a lot of money to throw at an idea, isn't it?
But that typifies the point. So we know there's this community out there. I mean, Bloodstock knows it and knew it years ago, and identified it and said, there is a massively loyal community here. If we don't fuck them over and we do what they want, they'll come and they'll love it and they will enjoy it. And you've proved that. And not to blow smoke up your ass because I'm on your podcast, but we spoke in the beginning. Who would you like to emulate? Who's out there that you think they do it right? Bloodstock was at the top of that list. Just the little things that you do, and I don't know the inner machinations of Bloodstock, but how they work and how you answer and reply, and when you get on site, and just the whole thing is kind of how we'd like to be as a radio station, and never losing sight of who's important. And that is the individual, and people look at the community as a whole and see its, but they don't see the wood for the trees, if you know what I mean. Once you lose sight of that or never recognize them, well, then good luck. No wonder it doesn't work.
and you mentioned the word community several times there. It's the word I always use about Bloodstock. If you had to use one word, and it's exactly the same with Primordial, and it's all about those people at the grassroots level. They are your people, and Bloodstock listen to those people. Everyone has an opinion. Even when people are moaning about band bookings and things like that, but they still listen. They listen and they will answer, and they don't lose sight of those. You don't become some faceless entity that just doesn't care about its customers. You got that connection with it, and Primordial have definitely got that as well. There's a whole raft of things that I could go through. There's suggestions, there's Facebook groups, a million Facebook groups, and anyone. It's just like, you've got an idea, bring it to us. We'll talk about it. We'll see what we can do with it, because that's the beauty of it, isn't it? You've got 853 people that invested in it to start with. That's a lot of people to start with, but since then, obviously, it's grown and grown, and why not harness that and use that to drive yourselves onwards?
Like you said, we're all kind of pulling in the same direction, and so if not us, who? You know what I mean? Let us do it. Together. So it just seemed like such an obvious opportunity to me, and I've been trying to convince others that that they should, but that wasn't their business model. And listen, I'm not going to moan about the past. If anything, the past and the timing of it led us to now. So as shitty as it was, silver linings that you don't really see at the time.
Yeah. So then, tell our listeners a little bit about the way Primordial works and the subscription aspect of it, and why you went down that road, and what are they getting for their money? Because obviously, a lot of people are going to just say, "Well, you got to pay for it. Why am I paying for radio when I can just listen to radio?" So explain that side of it.
Yeah. So this is probably the toughest hurdle that we meet all the time, is the instantaneous. Oh, I don't pay for radio. I'm not going to pay for that. And we'll argue right back, going, well, yes, you do actually. Do you have time? I can explain the model as to why we've chosen the way. Are you okay with that? Because it's
absolutely, go for it.
So, think of a radio station, a commercial radio station in this traditional model where they play songs and they play adverts. The whole thing is funded by those adverts, right?
Yep.
And in order to make those adverts worth enough to fund the whole enterprise, you need as many listeners as you possibly can. And so that's the reason why you get the same very commercially successful, recognizable songs all the time. And you know what I mean. The mainstay of classics, because they have been the most commercially popular songs. So just by default, they will get the most people who will go, hey, I love this song. And then you get enough listeners to make those ads that you don't want on your station in the first place. Nobody wants adverts on their stations, but this is the model that was used to fund the whole thing. So advertisers are the ones that pay for everything. So that has an effect on the music policy, because you can't really start going all crazy and experimental in the middle of the day when you desperately need audience. You can't do that, because soon as the audience goes down, your ad revenue goes down, and you're in trouble. And the other thing is that so much time is devoted to getting those advertisers on board, and that was the thing that I used to marvel at particularly at GMG. I think the entire programming team, just quickly off the top of my head, was about six of us, I think. And then the whole commercial team, those who were going out, this was their job, 9 to 5 every day, going out, was about 13. Excuse me. And they'd go out and they'd fight and they'd fight and they'd fight and they'd fight to get the advertising that ultimately we didn't want on the station. We didn't want adverts, but we had to have them. So we understand that model is flawed, and the reason why it's very difficult is because there's not enough of us in the United Kingdom. There's the rock and metal community is not big enough. So what's really interesting to me is Chris Evans has just come out and said, hey, look, I'm doing a breakfast show on Virgin Radio. I've left Radio 2, and we are going to have a breakfast show with no commercials, but a sponsorship deal with Sky. So Sky has gone in with millions and millions of pound sponsorship deal, and basically they're banking on the fact that Chris Evans himself is going to get the numbers that they need to justify that advertising spend. So although it's great that there's no commercials, so to say, he still needs to get the numbers so that sponsorship deal is worth enough to justify that breakfast show. Do you follow me? Am I making that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we decided, well, the research, all I've heard, all my radio career, the number one thing that people don't like is adverts. And it's been at the top of, and it didn't matter what genre it was, that was the top of it. So we decided, well, how can we do without adverts? It'd be even if we wanted to go down the advertising route, it would be challenging because we don't have the numbers to justify to make our adverts worth enough. So we said, well, look, ultimately, let's do a subscription model. So for £6 a month or 60 quid a year, whichever you choose, that's how you get the service. And the service is streamed, is delivered digitally, and it has no adverts whatsoever. But it also allows us to play music that you just would not hear in commercial radio, because ultimately we're people told us no adverts, and I'm sick and tired of the same songs. I'm sick and tired of the same old songs over and over and over again. So it allows us to have, God, I don't even know how big our playlist is compared to a commercial radio station, but man, it doesn't even come close. So we play 50% of what we play is new. When we do play a classic artist, it ain't just, it's just not going to be Enter Sandman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it allows us, it gives us freedom with our music, and it certainly gives us, freedom from advertisers and advertising. And it allows us to concentrate every meeting that we have and everything that we do. There's no, oh shit, what about the sponsor? We can't say that, or we can't do that. Well, every single thing that we do, the only filter it runs through is this best for our community? Is this the best thing we should do? And it's liberating. It's unbelievable how liberating that is from somebody who's worked in commercial radio for years and years and years. And it's fascinating when you then go back to, I went to Canada a couple of weeks ago, and I was listening to commercial radio stations, and I just wanted to string myself up. It was, oh my God, it's a commercial after commercial after commercial.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the reason why we set it up the way we did. We don't want to go after advertisers. We don't want to sit in the hip pocket of advertisers. We don't want to be in bed with labels or management. We want to be the only people that we want to answer to, and we do answer to. We're only accountable to our members. That's it.
Okay. That makes sense to me anyway, but obviously I've had a little bit of a bit of a sneak preview of that before, having been involved since it first started and that. But yeah, it does make sense to me. And I've worked on smaller radio stations before where you can play what you want without advertisement, but obviously it's a small sort of up and coming niche little radio station, and that doesn't exist anymore anyway. And they had great ideas, and they had a little bit of a community going and that sort of thing. So that's kind of why I like the Primordial model, because it's just sort of doing that on a bigger scale and just doing it better really, and it just sort of works. And obviously the history that you guys have had before as well, you've brought a lot of people with you, so you've also got sort of a bit of a following already, and then people, they're just so. I mean, the whole not a cult thing is really we have lots of little hashtags and sayings on Primordial, but I think the whole not a cult, because it is so, people are so invested in it, and they are, you see the t-shirts everywhere, you see the branding everywhere. We had Barry from Massive Wagons on interview last week, and he was saying about just, you can see how much Primordial's growing, and because you see those squids everywhere in the crowd, more and more each gig that they go to and things like that. So it's just that whole branding thing just makes it really pop and really stand out. So who's come up with that sort of really strong branding that is so Primordial?
Well, the squid it started in Manchester. Like between the music, there's what we call stagers, quirkies they are. So they're little jokes to go between the songs, and the voiceover guy, Bill Courage, comes on, and so. And now the sound of a squid being dropped from a 50-foot building, and it's like, no squid was harmed during the making of the stager; it was already dead, and that became popular. People loved it, and they said, so we started writing a few more sort of squid type things, and the squid was frowned upon in Guardian media. They hated it, and God Almighty, the inner machinations of Team Rock, they hated it as well. So we had to keep it. So, you know what I mean? It's like, well, man, this is, and it's been with us for such a long time. So, but that was just audio. That was just something that you would hear. So we went to Matt Young at Dewsbury. Went to Matt Young, who we'd seen with Death Cult, and said, Matt, here's the idea. Can you create the squid and the branding and the look and the colors? And if you the one thing that we desperately tried to do, when you see the cube logo, the Primordial logo, the idea was to make it that you wouldn't look at it and go, that's rock and metal. You know, that could be a tech company for you know, if you didn't know anything about it, you would just look at it and go, I have no idea what that company does. And we did that deliberately because of the non-stop stereotype of horns and laser eyes and sacrifice. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That has its place, but we didn't want to do that because we are trying to not just play black metal, but we might play some you know, pop rock. We'll play it all, everything in between. And to come up with a look that was representative of all the different genres, very difficult. So we said, right, okay, Matt, here's the brief. And he came back with the cube, and the second I saw it, I said, that's it. Like, he got it first time. And then when he produced the squid, who we named Bo Squidly now, when he produced that, I was like, oh my God, that's the squid. And like, first time. There was no refining. There was no going back and forth. Matt just produces this. There it is. Oh man. And everybody seems to have embraced it. I'm so pleased because I love the squid. So yes, we have our other things, but the squid will forever be as long as I'm here. I suspect it'll be part of what we do. And you see it everywhere. And it's so inadvertently. You see it, don't you? And maybe it's just because my eye, because I subconsciously I'm looking for it. But when you go to a gig and when you go to a festival, hey, there's a squid, and you'll be like across the field and go, hey, there's one there, and you see them, and it's like, oh, cool. And of course, obviously, my mind is obviously trained to see them. But it's interesting to see when they're out and people that you've never met or never clapped eyes on, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey man, how are you? Nice shirts. I saw one walking to the train station. I'm in Worcester Park in Surrey, and there was a squid walking towards me. Going, oh my God! It's like, hey dude, how are you? And just and the stories of people who see the squid out in public, whether they're in a supermarket or on an airplane or wherever it is, like, hey man, Primordial, yeah man. And so it is very much like a cult. We don't hide from that fact. It's definitely a cult, without question.
Yeah, but it's not just the squid. I mean, one of the first things that I noticed as well is Primordial Soup. You've got your own beer. I mean, now the rock and metal community, you know, for a radio station to have their own beer, that's just remarkable. So how did that come about?
We had something called the Long Road to Bruin when we were Team Rock, and that never managed to get off the ground. But that then evolved into, well, let's make our own beer. And the irony of it and the hypocrisy of it is we wanted to call it wank, right? And what it would be, here, imagine what the label would be. It would be like a dandelion. You know when a dandelion turns white and you can blow the little white bits off, you know?
Yeah.
So you'd see the top of a dandelion and the wind would be blowing and it would spell wank. And it would be a craft beer because we were poking fun at craft beer wankers, right?
Yep.
Because
get it.
And it's not necessarily the beer; it's the people who say, "Oh, I'm going out for a craft beer."
Yeah.
Why was the word craft important? Anyway, I go, why did you? I'm going out for some red wine or some do you know what I mean? Like, craft was important. So it just started as a conversation that we brew this thing called wank. And one person who used to listen to us, Sean Ailing, at Pick and Porter at the time in Kent, got in touch and said, I'll make it. And then we started thinking about the name wank, and we thought, well, that might cause problems in pubs. You know, if there's a barmaid in particular so we said, well, maybe that's not the greatest name. And then we got the axe from Team Rock, so that never happened. And then we started Primordial. And the idea behind Primordial is when the elements are right, that the reason why we chose the name is the theory of primordial soup. That's where life began on Earth, when the acidity levels and the pressure levels and the temperature and everything was right, that's when multicellular life began on Earth. And so when time and elements are correct, life begins. That's kind of our I think that's the first thing we said. And I think we start every hour saying that, to be honest. But that was the idea. And then we thought, hey, primordial soup. We should call it Primordial Soup, our beer, which we're going to call Soup, S-O-U-P.
Yep.
And then somebody said, why don't you call it Primordial Soup, but spell it sap with an umlaut. And then it became Primordial Soup, S-U-P with an umlaut, which is about the wankiest thing you could possibly do. So what we've done is we've created a wanker craft beer. Oh, man, I know such charlatans, total hypocrites. But it's great. And I tell you, when I went to, and it was on Canada Day, it was on the 1st of July, a couple of years back, and I went to the brewery in Kent, and man, when we actually poured the first pint from the actual vat, oh, it was victory, man. It was amazing. And every time when we have our events, soup is even, and we're the ones supplying it. We run out. It's amazing. It's great. Everywhere we go, we drink it dry. So yeah, it's just a moment of triumph personally, but everybody else seems to have embraced it. But it's pretty cool when you see it in a pub. I gotta say, it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But I say it is just one of these. It's another sort of string to your bow. You've mentioned the long road to brewing as well, and you also, that sort of leads us on to the events that you do as well. Because obviously, a radio station, people are just thinking, well, it's a radio station. I listen to the radio, but Primordial do lots of events as well, and the long road to brewing, doing in March this year as well, just going around the country and drinking, basically. As I went to a couple of them last year in Peterborough and Manchester. I went to last year, so yeah, dotted around all over the place and that lot. But the events are a big side of it as well, aren't they? Because obviously you don't just want people to be a name on a radio station or someone getting a shout out for a song. You want people to actually get together and actually meet up with each other and get to know each other, and that's a massive part of Primordial.
Well, I drove up to Newcastle upon Tyne, from Surrey one day in the summer last year, and as I was driving up, I was looking at the road signs and the different destinations, and so whether it was Luton, whether it was Hull, whether it was Sheffield, whatever, everywhere along the M1, almost every place that I saw, I said, hey, I know that Stephen lives there, Paul lives there, and I was thinking, my God, all these people that I now know and I consider friends are through Primordial. And so I don't think we really intended this to happen. We always thought, okay, we'd have like a yearly party or something like that. But the actual meetups of people physically meeting up, because the idea was that we thought that there was, the only metalhead in the village, and they were alone. And so we could digitally connect everybody across the United Kingdom. So whether you're out in the Upper Hebrides or whether you're in Southeast London or wherever it may be, you wouldn't have to be alone, because it's a pretty lonely existence, as I'm sure you know. And we thought we could connect people digitally. But what has happened, and this was not by design, it's extended to the physical. People meet up all the time. And one of my favorite things is on Monday morning, scrolling through socials, and you'll see pictures of people who, and to some random gig out in, I don't know, in Essex somewhere, and says, oh, yeah, we've had a little bit of a meetup, and there's 2 or 3 people, there, and there's a picture of them, and all through this connection that they've made through Primordial. And that's got to be the biggest tribute to what has happened over the past 2 years. It is the way that, and the thing that I love more than anything about Primordial is I think people understand that they have the freedom to act. If they want to do something, we're not, they know that we're not going to quash it. If we can, we will encourage it, and we'll make it happen. And there seems to be a spin-off effect of that, of people being somewhat energized and doing all these things, and we're not even involved anymore in many of these things. We have nothing to do with it. Yet these Primordial meetups and they happen all the time, and we have nothing to do with it, which I think is a tribute. And if somebody had said that was what was going to happen a couple of years ago, it would have been pretty far-fetched. It sounds really kind of corny, doesn't it, when you say it out loud?
Yeah.
But it isn't. It isn't by any stretch of the imagination. And the number of people who go to gigs on their own and didn't have people to go with, now they do.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah, it is awesome. And as I say, you're right. There is the big PR fam group, which is obviously the main sort of family group. But there's all sorts of spin-offs off that. There's weight loss, there's book clubs, there's memes groups. That I don't know how many we've got. About sort of 20, 30 Facebook groups for people to sort of with all their different interests to talk to people about and stuff like that. So you've got that via Facebook, and then when you're meeting up with people as well, you know what they like, you know what they're into. You can chat to them about it, and of course there's all the music behind it as well, because obviously people are going to gigs all over the place and doing that meetup aspect as well. So
I think that's it's interesting that you bring that up, because yes, of course, central to everything that we do is the rock and metal, and we all share that common love and the interest, but we're not the same. There are people who are, for example, we just had a Burns supper last weekend, which is a great story. And the chef at the Marriott in Edinburgh stuck his hand up. He listens to Primordial. He is Primordial. And he said, yeah, man, I'll put it together. And we went and had this beautiful meal, sit-down meal. We all got our ties on and our jackets and stuff, and we had this Burns supper. And so whatever skill... That's the thing that used to frustrate the hell out of me, was just everybody went to the stereotype. They didn't understand rock and metal. It was just that stereotype of drongos in a field dragging their knuckles. Yeah. And okay, yes, we do that. But we don't do that all the time. We have jobs and lives and families and interests. And we spend money, and we have hobbies. And what you just said about the different Facebook groups that have materialized, just show that. And we're not just all sitting at home throwing the horns going, yeah, okay, that's part of it, but not all of it. And that's the bit that I spent years trying to convince the people, saying, look, they're just normal people. They have all these things, but they just happen to like a particular type of music. You pigeonhole them into the stereotype because you don't understand them. And I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast will know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the thing, that one of the major driving forces that led us to set it up and say, well, fuck, why are we trying to convince others that we're worth it? Fuck them. If they don't want to take the time to understand it and they just want to judge it superficially and incorrectly, then, I don't think I can change that. I've tried, but my life is finite, and I'm not going to spend any more time doing that.
Another thing I want to mention about, you mentioned about the Burns night as well, it was also the launch of the Pride of Primordial, the tartan. You've even got a tartan. That is crazy.
Well, it is, and it's bizarre because, God, everything's such a long story with me, I have to say. But my wife works for Cancer Research UK, and they have a committee in Scotland who commissioned and made a Cancer Research UK tartan. And my wife, Jo, says, oh, wow, you and your community would be perfect for this. I mean, everybody, you'd love to have your own tartan. And so I said, yeah, that's an interesting idea. And I started thinking about how there is a real sort of clan mentality to rock and metal. I thought, well, we should have our own colors. And I know we have our colors in our T-shirts and stuff like that, but our actual own colors that we own. So, I got on to Jules. Jules Barkle is her name, and she typically Primordial. She doesn't get paid by Primordial. She does a tremendous amount for us. But I went to her and I said, she lives in Aberdeen, and I said, Jules, here's the idea. Do you think you could do it? And she goes, oh God, yeah, absolutely. And so off she went, and it took a long, long time. Toing and froing, and eventually we agreed on the color scheme, and we agreed on the what we were going to do with it, and then we got in touch with this small mill in Glasgow to get it produced, and we did this in August, and it didn't come, and it's just dragging on and on and on and on and on, and basically we wanted to make sure that we had it in time for Christmas so that we could take advantage of the commercial opportunity of Christmas, and it didn't come, and I was really, really disappointed that it wasn't going to arrive in time for Christmas. So I went on air one day and I just said, Oh, I'm just so disappointed. We wanted to launch our tartan before Christmas, in time for Christmas, blah, 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 blah. And this is very primordial. So a dude on Twitter, Kilgore Trout, tweets in and goes, well, why don't you do it on Burns Day instead? That'd be better. And we went, yeah, that's a much better idea. So, and we just had a quick conversation on air about it, going, yeah, why don't we do it on Burns Day? And then Fergs got a touch from the Marriott in Edinburgh, said, yeah, I'll do the meal. And boom, 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 boom. And once again, I had very little to do with it. It happened. And we sold tickets, and on the 25th of January in Edinburgh, 44 of us sat down and I had a haggis from all different places around the country. Yeah. And we launched our tartan, our very own tartan. And it was I keep on using that phrase, it's so primordial. But it is, because from a situation of disappointment and letdown, you're going, oh, we fought so hard to get this tartan launched in time for Christmas, comes this amazing event that we never would have thought of if it weren't for that. And it just teaches you that that even when amongst the disappointment, there is opportunity, and there is actually positive. And yet we seem to find it. It's amazing. It was great. And, of course, the tartan is the most beautiful thing on the planet, as I'm sure you agree. Isn't it wonderful?
Absolutely, of course it is. Yeah, I'm my surname is Scottish roots. It's from Menzies somewhere or other. So it's I've got a tartan somewhere, a Menzies tartan as well. But I'm all for blue stuff. I'm an Everton fan, so blue works well with me. So I just want to rattle through a few more other little bits and bobs that you guys do, because I do want people to sort of check Primordial out. If people aren't quite willing to part with their money yet or stuff like that, what sort of options do they have? Because there is a free stream as well, isn't there? But there's also options to try it for free for a certain amount of time, yeah? Yeah, well, the free stream, if you go to primordialradio.com, there's a gratuitous plug, but if you go there, you'll see there's a free option, and what that is, the music is exactly the same. At the same time, it's actually the same music stream being served on the front of house of the free stream, but behind it, what is the paywall? If you all remember, what you get is the people, and we've based this whole thing on people. Yeah, anybody can play music, but it's the people and the people involved. It's the community. That's what we said. That's where the value is, and that's where people will pay £6 or £5 a month, depending on what option you take. So there is on the landing page, if you go to primordialradio.com, you will see, hey, just try a 30-day free trial. And there's the other thing that we face is everybody's doing a free trial, and it's like and everybody's being bombarded by a gazillion messages and free trial this, free trial that, and so it's difficult. But I think when our conversion rates are incredible. When we finally get people to go, oh, okay, I will give it a listen, and they take the 30-day free trial, the conversion is astonishing. It really is, compared to what other industry standards are. I mean, it's mind-boggling. So our challenge is to get people to actually is to go, God, is first overcome, I'm not going to pay for that, and to try it, because it's not as easy as flicking on the radio in your car. It's not, and we know this. It will be eventually, but it's not now. So you have the 30-day free trial. You don't enter any credit cards. There's no payment. There's no payment details. There's nothing. It's just a free trial. That's it. And if you like it, you continue. If you don't, you go back to the free stream. That's how it works. It's difficult for us going out and about and trying to spread the word of Primordial, because, as I say, as soon as you do sort of, you mentioned that you got to pay for things. I go, oh no, I don't want to pay and stuff like that. But it is just getting people to check that out. And another thing is a good thing I think people could do, maybe, if you just look at the Twitter feed, which is Primordial Plays, which is the songs that have been played. You can just have a browse on that and just see, oh, look at that song that they played, or that's a song from an album that I like. That's not the single that they released from the album. That's an album track, and things like that. So you do get even just a quick glance at that. If people are thinking of maybe trying it out, just have a quick look at the Twitter feed to see what stuff's being played, because you will see that unusual stuff, and it's not the commercial stuff, it's not the repeated stuff. And I as I've said before, I come from an up and coming bands. I'm all about Bloodstock's Metal to the Masses thing and all the emerging bands and things like that, and they are very, very well represented on Primordial. Pete's got his Newbies at Noon, he's got the new Newbies weekend show that he's done. they're very well represented. So I'm sending more and more. Whenever we do Free Spins Friday, which is obviously we'll talk about that as well, because that is a whole day of just requests, which I don't think any other stations do. You see the eclectic mix that you get in that, and I can request all my little up and coming bands alongside all the big headlining bands that other people are getting, and it's just a free for all.
Yeah, well, that's a good way of describing it, really. But people say, we go back to that point about how people say, "Oh, I don't pay for it," but you do. You pay for it in limited shitty playlists. They're not shitty playlists. That's wrong. But limited familiar playlists. Honestly, as you just described, if you are into being comfortable and wanting to be, you want to feel nice and comfortable and recognize everything and feel safe, Primordial is not for you. We come up against it saying, "Oh, I got Spotify. What do I need that for?" Well, Spotify works in an algorithm that will basically try and make decisions based upon what it knows that you like. So you're going to get things recommended. Oh, you like Sevenfold? Well, then you might like this because it's similar to Sevenfold. An algorithm. That's what the algorithms do, is to try and expose you to new music that we think you'll like. Not us. We'll go, and it's difficult. We ask a lot of our listeners. You're going to hear a lot of stuff that you've never heard before. A lot of it that you didn't know you liked, and some of it you won't. I mean, yeah. I don't know how else. I don't know anybody. I've never met anybody anywhere who likes it all. It doesn't exist.
Literally, last Friday, Free Spin Friday, pretty sure it was. I heard my first ever Baby Metal song and my last ever Baby Metal song because that was just I've obviously heard mixed opinions on them, but I'd never actually heard them before, and I heard it and I was like, that is awful. Yeah, I will never listen to that again in my life. But hey,
but then right beside your tweet going, "Oh my God, that was awful," will be, "Oh, Baby Metal, give me chocolate. This is the greatest song ever." And so this.
Well, actually, what actually happened was that completely coincidental, even before because I did put that up to say, that's the last Baby Metal I'll left. Literally, the next song, Pete Bailey played Ramage Inc., which was my favourite album of last year, played the title track of that I had requested, but it just so happened that was the next one in the queue. So I went straight from Baby Metal to a song that I absolutely love. So that proved the point perfectly.
You know what's interesting? I mean, it is for me, and I'm purely subjective. So, I mean, you have to take what I say with a grain of salt, because obviously I love it. Obviously I do. But when you listen to it, and you listen to it long enough, when you first listen to it, it's a bit jarring, because it doesn't, as much as Pete tries, he's up against it because he's trying to make all these different genres flow, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And it's a tough job. Pete's got a tough job. But he does it really, really, really well. But still, there are moments like, oh my God, that's kind of a transition, isn't it? But then those moments where you're kind of jarred disappear, and you start to embrace the variety and all the different songs. If you then are forced to go back to normal playlist, commercial playlist, you go, oh my God, this is dull. Yeah. And this is just me. This is my, other people may absolutely love it. They may say, hey, I'm classic rock through and through, and that's all I want, which is great. That's not us, and that's not me. Yeah. I'd like to hear it all and make my own mind up.
Absolutely. So give us a quick run through of what shows are on Primordial at the moment, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll talk a little bit more about Bloodstock.
Yeah, so it's a daily service, obviously 24/7, and there are human beings, live interactive human beings. It's a radio station, and I think when you made reference to it about how sort of the smaller stations trying to make a go of it. Well, we thought, let's occupy. Everything is going online, and everything is online. I mean, you know this, but radio still has managed to preserve its space, really, because of how it's delivered. And so getting FM frequency or DAB in your car is very easy. And the internet has yet to overcome that, although it already is, and it will eventually. 5G, 4G, it does it now. But I mean, 5G, when that comes in, game over, man. Anyway, we decided to make it as a radio station, not a specialist shows, and it's a radio station. And it behaves and acts like a radio station. So the breakfast show with me, And that starts from 7 in the morning, Monday to Friday. And then there's Pete Staley in the middle. I think Pete's 29, I'm 53. And then Dewsbury in the afternoon, he's 37. 3 very, very different characters, very different musical tastes, and very different programs, really. And we have weekend shows. You'll see the whole schedule if you like at primordialradio.com. But we have a fella up in Prutta in Northumberland by the name of Stephen Shorty, as we know him. And we have the world's first and only heavy metal marine biologist, Tom the Blowfish Hurd, who does a Sunday program as well. So if we can get to the next level and we can take that next step, then we'll add more people, because what we want to do is add as many people as we possibly can and make it all about the people. So there's a place that we can hang out. So you can see the entire schedule. You can have a look at it online. But it's a radio station, as you would expect.
Cool. Well, thanks for telling us all about that, Moose. I know it was a little bit pluggy, and to anyone out there that's thinking, oh, why the hell's he got... Well, the thing is, Bloodstock Radio is not a radio station. We are not in competition. As far as I'm concerned, we are, of the same... We're cut from the same cloth, That whole community word, you mentioned it before, Bloodstock and Primordial have got very similar things. And, of course, you do your big meetups at these festivals as well. You have a big meetup at Download. You had a big meetup at Bloodstock last year, especially after Alien Weaponry, who are a band that the station's really embraced and stuff like that. So, I'm all about just basically getting things out there, and like-minded people are always going to be welcome at Bloodstock, and certainly welcome on my podcast anyway. So there you go.
Cool. Well, thanks, Paul. Thank you very much.
Cool. So I'm going to finish off with mentioning Bloodstock, obviously, because I believe you've been a few years ago, and you're going to be going this year as well, because you're very interested in one of our headliners.
Yeah, Sabaton. And, it's bizarre. We when we were working in Manchester at Rock Radio, we had a fellow by the name of Harry Mark, and he would be on socials all the time saying, play Sabaton, play Sabaton. We were a classic rock station, so Sabaton didn't really fit in. And once again, we had to work within the confines of what the format said. And so he would go on and on and on about Sabaton. Says, they play to 40,000 people here. Da, da, da. They're just unknown in the UK. They're massive. Da, 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 da. And so I didn't really know them aside from through Harry Mark. And then the one year where we didn't go on holiday in those 2 weeks in August, we went to Bloodstock, and it was unbelievable. It was beautiful. It was warm. It was intimate. It was, and what I love, and this is going to sound like it's gratuitous, but when you get to Bloodstock, you're not smacked in the face with corporate names all over the place. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still sponsors there, but it just doesn't seem to be quite as in your face. But Pepsi. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's and I'm sure that's deliberate, but it works. And then you see acts that you've never seen before. And Sabaton was one of them. I was, aware of Sabaton, and I'd listened to some of the songs at that point in time. But then they came on. It's like, oh my God, beautiful August evening. The sun was just going down because I think they were the penultimate act ahead of Trivium, they were just amazing. They were just amazing. And it was the whole setting and the surrounding. And when everything clicks, and you're at that gig going, yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, so I haven't been back because it's always been holiday. So not this year. We're definitely coming this year.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we got Sabaton as our headliners on the Friday night, so we'll play out with some of that. So, choose a Sabaton song for us, and we'll get that stuck on for you. And, thanks for talking to us. And you can introduce it in your very best radio voice.
Oh, wow. I got to say, Paul, you should work in radio. You got a hell of a voice. Paul. Right. Well, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. And we're going to finish with an unbelievable tune from Sabaton. This is Cliffs of Gallipoli.
Side, hear them calling for my thoughts now friends are resting side by side. They will never leave our hearts or fade away, live mountain, where the ocean meets the sand, cliffs of burden, where the soldiers rushed into a certain death. At the shoreline, blood of heroes stains the land. Light a candle, one for each of them who fought and died in vain. There is no enemy, there is no victory, only boys who lost their lives in the sand. Young men were sacrificed, their names are carved in stone and kept alive, and forever we will honor the memory of them. And they knew they would die. Gallipoli left their letters in the sand. Such waste of life, Gallipoli. Dreams of freedom turn to dust.
Yes, indeed, the awesome Sabaton there, as requested by Moose, and thanks to him for that chat. Remember that if you do want to check out Primordial Radio completely free for 3 whole months with no need for credit cards or you have to cancel or any of all that crap, just click the link against this podcast, which is www.tiny.cc/Primordial Radio with a capital P and a capital R, and I really think you'll like what you hear. Okay, that's us done for this week, so I will catch you next time on Bloodstock Radio.
By the fans, for the fans. Bloodstock Radio.